Okay, so Yachimo greetings, yet I say we thank everybody for tuning in once again. I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Raneh Mbata Akan. Odwirafo of Akwamu Amarukai TV Mu, the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojira the purified nation, Afuraikait, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So we wanted to touch on a specific topic that's very important with regard to ancestral religious practice, spirituality, dealing with the inherited ancestral spiritual practices that are inborn, innate, that we carry in our Spiri-Genetic blood circles, no matter where we have migrated in the world or forced to migrate into the world. Those of us in the Western Hemisphere, we were forced to migrate into the Western Hemisphere because of the enslavement era and so forth, but we never lost our ancestral religious practices. This aspect, which is very central to our ancestral religious practices and just our ancestral culture, to be a cohesive Afuraitkait, meaning African communal culture. This notion of the Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity, central office in the form of priestesshood that has existed for thousands of years, transmitted intergenerationally and transcarnationally, meaning through successive incarnations, through specific blood circles, specifically through certain matriclans into our families to this day. This is an unbroken lineage going back to ancient times all the way to this very moment, wherever we exist in the world, inclusive of those of us in the Western Hemisphere. If we embrace our ancestral culture, just like if we recognize, for example, when we look just on a mundane level, the way that this diet in the Western, society, the way we're enculturated to eat and consume food and so forth, and we develop high blood pressure and heart disease and diabetes and, all kinds of diseases that are preventable. When we go back and say, well, what were we doing before we took on this standard American diet? Mainly fruits and vegetables and, organic foods and so forth. When we go back to that, then we start cleaning up our diet and transforming our health and so forth. When we look at our condition, the way we operate, the way we communicate with one another, the self-destructive behaviors we manifest, and they show up in different ways, not just the way we treat each other, but the way we treat ourselves. Anxiety, depression, fear, angst, anger, unfulfillment, and so forth. That's all a result of us on some level embracing white, Western, perverse, ill culture, as opposed to embracing our naturally inherited way of life, our culture, our amambre, the way of the Aman, the nation, and so forth, for Afuraikait people. And central to our culture is our ancestral religious practices. Ancestral religion animates the culture. So, central to our culture is the manner in which we interface with the great mother and great father, supreme being, the forces in nature that animate all features of creation, such as the sun, moon, planets, stars, black substance of space, earth mother, oceans, rivers, fire, atmosphere. Every feature of creation physically has a spiritual agency that animates it. We live in harmony with the world physically. Our physical bodies are dependent on the sun, sunlight, dependent on the oceans, dependent on the atmosphere, dependent on the earth mother, of course, dependent on the gravitational pull of the moon and the planets and everything else. But our spirit bodies are dependent on that proper relationship with the spiritual forces that animate the sun, animate the moon, animate the earth mother, animate the rivers, oceans, atmosphere, and so forth. These forces in creation are called Abosom in Akan, they're Orisha in Vodou, they're Orisha in Yoruba, the Vodou in the Ewe tradition, the Arusi in the Igbo tradition, the Ntoro, and ancient Khanit and Kamit and so forth. So we've always had the capacity and the means by which we align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order every moment of every day. And if we engage in some form of mistake, we get off track, we engage the ritual process to realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. So central to that capacity to maintain that kind of culture, that divine culture, maintain divine order in thoughts, intentions, and actions from youth all the way through elders and eldresses in the community. If you have a mechanism whereby every single member in the community, whether they're a young person all the way up to the elders and eldresses, you have a mechanism whereby everybody can align their thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order every moment of every day. And they have a standard to measure their thoughts, intentions, and actions by. And if they get off track, there's a ritual method, the ritual incorporation of divine law, and the ritual restoration of divine balance. So you can realign your thoughts, intentions, and actions with order. So you can promote that divine order in the community. Then we begin to restore order in our community on every level. That's the function of ancestral religion. The ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual, we accept those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to accept in order to restore balance to our lives. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject, to repel, in order to restore balance to our lives. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. What are you incorporating? Thoughts, intentions, and actions? Is it in harmony with divine order or not? If it is, you incorporate those things and you operate based upon that. If you incorporate things that are out of harmony with divine order and therefore you begin to perpetuate disorder within yourself and the community, then you engage the ritual process to reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities so you can restore balance to your existence. So, and that is what animates our culture. We said religion animates the culture. Nanason, ancestral religion, animates Amamre, ancestral culture. So ancestral culture is the acceptance, the divine acceptance of order, meaning divine order, and the divine rejection of disorder. So you accept things that are in harmony with order and you repel things that are out of harmony with order. Just like you inhale and take in oxygen and so forth, but you exhale carbon dioxide. You ingest food for nutrients and so forth, but you eliminate waste. You accept or incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities that align you with order, and you reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities that would otherwise place you out of harmony with order. So the divine acceptance or love of order and the divine rejection or hatred of disorder, those are the expansive and contractive poles of culture, and ancestral religion animates the culture. So this is central to ancestral religion. So we're talking about tonight the Hemaat Ntoro. That's a title for the wife of the deity, and we're talking about Spiri-Genetic Priestesshood. So let's check that out. So it's based on a few articles and some of the books that we have published that we're going to get into. Okay, so the Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the god, restoring the value of the Afuraitkaitnit, African Black priestess. We published this article a number of years ago, and it's based on, ancestral religious practice and the books that we have published and, our experience in tradition and so forth. We're going to get into a number of different things cosmologically. So first and foremost, this image, and she, of course, is the image you see on the flyer. This is Ankh Nesnefer Abra, an ancient Hemaat Ntoro, an ancient priestess from ancient Khanit and Kamit, thousands of years ago. She's an ancestress to those priestesses who exist today. Just like you have 2 parents and 4 grandparents and 8 great-grandparents and 16 great-great-grandparents, if you go back 31 generations, you have over 2 billion great-great-great-great-grandparents on that line. So when we go back intergenerationally, you'll find that this great ancestress is a great ancestress by blood to the various Afuraitkaitnit women, African Black women on the continent, as well as here in the Western Hemisphere, who have inherited the capacity to function as Hemaat Ntoro, or priestess, a living vessel for the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou in our community. So you have a direct Spiri-Genetic blood tie to this priestess, as well as others. So, but she is a literal ancestress. Now, we say in our ancestral culture of Khanit and Kamit, which are the terms for Nubia and Egypt, the Hemaat Ntoro represents the wife, Hemat, of the god, the deity, the Ntoro. This includes women of royal ancestry, meaning those Afuraitkait, African Black blood circles who were founding clans, as well as those who were chosen to function as rulers by the Akutu, the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated. Queens, queen mothers, priestesses, and others of the same matriclan blood circle inherited the sacerdotal role of Hemaat Ntoro. And let's look at the vocalization of these terms and show the connection to our current ancestral cultures. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of terms, first and foremost. All right. So you see the term and it's spelled in the Medutu, Hemaat Ntoro. So the spelling is actually H, the symbol for Hem, which is the vessel here that contains water and so forth, the cistern that contains water. That's the Hem sound, H and M together. Hem actually represents the or the womb and so forth. And then the little half loaf of bread, which is the T sound, so that's Hemat. And then you have the X that is spelled with the consonantal structure of NTR. In previous dictionaries of the Meditation Ntoro so-called hieroglyphs, they used to insert E's in between consonants if they didn't know the proper vocalization. If they didn't know what the vowel was, they would simply stick an E in between until they could figure that out. Today, in most hieroglyphic dictionaries, they would just simply write it NTR. In fact, let's just show a representation of that. And we're doing this just to show the continuity of our language and culture. So, if you see, typically they will show the the X, the Him, and the T. So this is Ntoro, Hemet. The wavy line is in, which is of, and then the reed and the drawboard and the wavy line is Amen. So it's the Hemaat Ntoro, Amen, the wife of the divinity of Amen, and so forth, the deity Amen. But you'll see it spelled with the HM combination. That is the cistern right here with the water. Then the T symbol, that's the loaf of bread, the little half loaf, looks like a half circle. So HMT. And then you'll have the X, which is spelled consonantally as NTR. So you'll see typically today they would just have HMT, NTR. When they approximate what it might sound like because they don't know the vocalizations, they will say Hemet, Netcher, in Amun. It's really Hemaat Ntoro in Amen. And you see that here as well. So we want to show you the vocalizations first and foremost. When they talk about Amen, let's dispel that real quick. All right. On one of the pages on our website, So this is Amen. They'll often mispronounce his name and misspell it Amun or Amon and so forth. And the reason why you'll see them spell it Amun and Amon, because they don't want you to see the actual spelling is Amen. Because when you see it's Amen, and that's the name of the great God, supreme being and so forth on the masculine side, then you'll realize that they stole the name Amen and they use it at the end of Christian prayers, Muslim prayers, Jewish prayers and so forth, Amen or Amin and so forth. And you realize they stole that. And when you begin to investigate, you'll find, as we have published in our book, Kuku Tuntun, that their entire traditions are 100% fraud. Allah is a fictional character. Yahweh is a fictional character. Jesus, Yeshua, Yahweh Shah is a fictional cartoon character who never existed. Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, David, Aaron, Moses, all of these characters are fictional characters who never existed of any form or of any race. The same is true of Muhammad, Buddha, all of them. So when you begin to investigate, you will find that not only did they steal Amen, but they also suppressed the feminine. This is Amen, the great God. This is Amenet, the great goddess, the great mother. So they were priests and priestesses of Amen. There were priests and priestesses of Amenet, the great mother. So they don't want you to understand that there's a great God and a great goddess. We have names for them in all of our cultures across the continent. In Akan, there are Inyame and Inyamewa, that is Amen and Amenet and so forth. Across the board, we have that balance of male and female. So we just want to dispose of the false notion there. But so when we're talking about the Hemaat Ntoro, or the okay, I want to make sure we went out for a second. Let me know in the chat room. Can you, is it back on? Can you see? Can you hear? Does somebody give me a thumbs up real quick? Okay, cool. All right. So we just wanted to, dispose of that misinformation. Now, let's get to, here's what we were trying to get to. So you see that they spell it in this fashion. We're going to get to one of our documents where we go into some detail to show the continuity of culture, because we never stop speaking the language. All right. So you just saw Hemaat Ntoro as a title in ancient Kemet, as the wife Hemaat of the Ntoro, the divinity. And let me just show that screenshot once again so you can see the. Okay. So you see Hemaat Ntoro, they'll say Hemet, Netra, and so forth. But why do we say Hemaat Ntoro? Because in the Akan language, which is directly descendant of the language of ancient Kemet, just like the various languages across the continent are directly descendant of the language of Kemet and so forth, and Khanit, Egypt and Nubia, we still use these terms every single day. They have the same meanings, same multifaceted, multi-tiered metaphysical meanings intact, spoken every single day with the proper vocalizations. So let's get back to our article to prove that, and then we're going to get into the function of the priestess. So we wrote an article called Henet, Etymology and Cosmology of the Term Queen. Now, We have the sacred hennet or pelican, and there's a reason for utilizing that animal totem. So, white linguists typically try to trace the term queen back to the Proto-Indo-European root. Of course, it predates that by thousands of years. We've always had this title, and it has a cosmological meaning. So let's look at the proper definitions. You'll see in the etymological dictionaries, they'll say queen comes from, they'll give all these different, queen, Old Saxon, Norse, Proto-Germanic, and so forth. But then the Proto-Indo-European root, Gwen. And then they'll talk about the wife of the king, marriage, taking of a wife, and so forth, all of that. Then when you look at the Proto-Indo-European root, Gwen, meaning woman. So they have two sources. They'll talk about queen. Original sense seems to have been wife, specialized by Old English, wife of a king. That was their rendering. And then the Proto-Indo-European root meaning woman. Now, let's get to the actual origin. And you also note that Sanskrit and Greek and other languages, the change between the sounds gain, like misogyny, the just sound, janis, kino, the ka sound, queen, the qua sound. You'll see that in Greek, gaini or jaini and so forth, and kins and kino, these different dialectical variants. Now let's look in ancient Kemet, and you'll find the origin. Hennet, the twisted flax, which is this twisted rope flax. You have the little vessel, the new vessel, and the symbol of the loaf of bread here for the tea, and then the seated woman. So that's hen or hennu, lady, mistress, queen, goddess, and so forth. Hen, from the root hen, what does that mean? To command, to direct, to admonish, to rule, to administer, to arrange, to keep in order, and so forth. Hennet, business functions. So if hen means to rule, to direct, to command, hennet is the one who rules, directs, commands. And the T feminizes the noun in ancient Kemet. Like you have Amen, the great god. Amenet, the great goddess. You have Ra, for example. Let's just show that real quick. And for those who haven't seen this before, we want to make sure you get a chance to see this image. One of the 31 books we've published is in Yonkumpon and Yonkunton, showing that in the Akan language, in Yonkumpon and Yonkunton is actually Ra and Ra'et. So this is Ra'et, that is an image from the Temple of Khensu in the precinct of Mut in so-called Karnak, which is really Apet Asedu in ancient Kemet. And this is an image of Ra from the Temple of Nefertari in Kemet, the wife of Ramesu II. But this is Ra, the creator. This is Ra'et, the creatress. They are subjects of and subordinate to Amen and Amenet. Amen and Amenet are the great being, and they direct their Ra force and Ra'et force, their creative power, to go out and create for them. They direct them to go out and create. Just as you as a being direct your life force energy to work for you, Amen and Amenet direct Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, to go out and create. But you have Ra, masculine, Ra'et, feminine. You have Amen, masculine. You have Amenet, feminine. So we're just showing that the T feminizes nouns in the language of ancient Kemet. That was retained, of course, in English. And that's why you have John and Johnette, Sean and Shawnette, George and Georgette and so forth, they maintain that suffix from us. So hen means to direct, conduct affairs, command, rule, admonish, and so forth, arrange, administer. Henet is she who arranges, commands, directs, rules, administers, and so forth. So lady, mistress in the sense of masteress, not mistress like someone who's cheating on the, we're talking about a masteress, master and masteress, or mistress and so forth. That's what we're talking about. So derived from the feminine version of the term hen, meaning to command, direct, rule, administer. So henet, and the little vessel, the new vessel, that represents a vessel that carries water and so forth. That is the vessel here. You'll see the sky, female divinity, goddess, Nut. She's the vessel, the atmosphere that surrounds the earth and so forth. So in the spelling of Henet, we notice the new vessel included in the Medutu. The new vessel, sometimes written as NU, sometimes written as NW, which is new. Now, it's a container of fluid which carries the primordial energy of the deities Nun and Nonet, which undergirds all of creation. That container is replicated in the womb of the woman carrying the amniotic fluid within which the child gestates and so forth. So we just saw hen, henet, meaning ruler, administrator, all of that. Now we look in the Akan language and the Akan dictionary, and what do we have? Ohenni, king, prince, chieftain, chief, and so forth. Then we have Ohema, queen. There are dialectical variants of Ohema, and when you look, you'll see Ohema is comprised of Ohenni and Oba. Oba is the term for a woman. Oba in the Asante dialect, Obea in the Akwamu dialect, and Ekweapem dialect. So Ohenni Ba is the woman or female. Oba, Ohenni, sovereign or ruler. So Ohenni, king, Ohema or Ohenni Ba is queen. But as you can see, Henni, meaning ruler, is the same term Hennet in ancient Kemet, meaning sovereign, ruler, commander, admonishing, rule, and everything else. But we go a little bit further, just so we can show you why it's Hema, or Hema is Ohenni Ba. Let's look at the dialectical variants. In the Akan language, the tree language, they talk about the different suffixes for woman. And let's go down real quick. So they talk about by the connection with certain succeeding adjectives, chiefly just have a constant high tone and so forth. So you have Ohenni, Ohenimu, Ohempa, but Ohenni is the masculine. Ohenni Wa is another variation of the feminine. So it can be Ohenni Ba, which is masculine. I'm sorry, Ohenni Ba, which is one variation of the female Ohenni. Ohenni Wa is another Akan dialectical variant of the feminine. So you have both. You have Henni is king, Henne Wa, or Henne Ba is queen. Henne Wa in Akan is the actual vocalization of the ancient term. Hinnut, which is really Hinwat. In Akan, we just say Hinniwa. That's the actual term. So we just want to show the connection. Then you go back to the language of ancient Kemet. Hemaat, a woman, wife. Hemaat Nsu, the king's woman or wife, the queen. So as you recall, when they took the term queen and they wrote it as GWEN, and let's look at that. They said queen or queen, came from the Proto-Indo-European Gwen or Hwen, and they said it either means woman or wife of a king. That term Hwen comes from Hen, and you have Henni, which is ruler, but Hema also meaning woman or wife. So we just show the comparisons. Hen or Henni, mistress, queen. Hinewa is the, queen in the Akan language. Hemat, woman or wife. Hema, the wife of the king and so forth. Wife of a chief, female monarch, consort of a king and so forth. So we have Hinne, Hinewa, and also Hema, both. But we also take notice of the dialectical variant of the H sound, ahini, coral, pearl, beads. So you have a string of beads called ahinie. You see a woman wearing beads around her waist and so forth, or we have beads around the neck like these beads that I'm wearing here. You have ahinie. But another dialectical variant, you'll see ahwini, ahwinie, hw, ahwinie, hwe. And this is where you get that quen, ahini, or aquene. This is where they get quene or huene, and later quen and queen. It comes directly from our language. So they didn't create anything. So we were just showing these dialectical variants of these terms and so forth. But then we go a little bit further. The reason why Henne is also a title for a queen and administrator, because first and foremost, Henni or Hinuit is a divinity. And this is from the pyramid text, the earliest religious text in existence in the world, the pyramid text, the Meru text, and Hinuit or Hinnet is a female divinity. So when you talk about being a queen or Hwen or Ahwenne, Ahenne, and so forth, that is a title coming first and foremost by a female force in creation, a sovereign force in creation. That title that you've inherited comes directly from her. Now, who is she? In the above terms, Hennet is a sacred location in the spirit realm, and you will see that the determinative symbol of that sacred location, spelled Hennet, is the symbol of that sacred Hennet, or pelican, that is the sacred Achinebois or animal totem for the divinity. That deity, that goddess's name is Hennet, and the name queen comes directly from her. Now, she's shown as a sacred animal totem, the pelican and so forth, the Meru text, the oldest text in Utterance 318, they reference her. The pelican, meaning Hennet, is the king's mother, and the king is her son. So, Hennet, the great pelican, is the mother of the king. In the later coffin text, over 4,000 years ago, in text 259, it said, I am the pelican, meaning I am Hennet, who saw your birth. I have come that I may inspect my nest. Coffin text 263, I am Hennet, the pelican, who saw your birth when you were born. I have come here seeking my fledglings. This is an image from ancient Kemet of the sacred Hennet, Hinewa, animal totem of this female force in creation. Of course, this is her living animal totem as well. So she's the Ntoro, the goddess Hennet, Hinewa, mother of the king, queen. She's the Gwene, the mother. In coffin text 622 and related text, it is stated, Hennet the pelican will prophesy. The shining one will go forth. Now, hold on one second. Okay. Just want to make sure. All right. Okay, just want to make sure you can still see. All right. Okay, so it says Henet the pelican, the great mother divinity Henet will prophesy. So there's association with prophecy with the Henet, with the queen, the divinity that governs queenship. The shining one will go forth. Henet as queen mother, the primordial queen mother, the divinity who's the primordial queen mother, prophesies the birth of the king, the return of an ancestral spirit to live again in the world among the clan. And that also prophesies that which is to come as a form of divination. So when we talk about the priestesses and so forth, the Hemaat Ntoro, they are Hinewa, queen mothers and so forth, but they have that capacity for divination, Adebisa, which includes the capacity to quote unquote prophesy or tell what's going to unfold in the spirit realm and physically. When pelican fledglings feed from their mother, they are shown to go into convulsions and appear to fall unconscious after feeding for a short period. After giving offerings and receiving the energy of the Ntoro, the goddess, the healer or healeress goes into convulsions, spirit possession. When they begin to speak, their declarations are messages from the deities and ancestral spirits. So, if you ever see, little baby pelicans and so forth, and they're fed from the mother, they start shaking and then they fall, but then they come back, to themselves. When we get the energy, the offerings are given to the great divinity, the queen mother and so forth. We receive her dispensation of energy. We go into quote unquote convulsions, and you see someone gets possessed and their body shakes to a certain extent, go into some form of convulsions we call Akom, spirit possession in the Akan tradition and so forth. Once they come out of that possession or come out of those convulsions and so forth, the words that they are speaking are the deity speaking through them. The Abosom speaking through them. The Orisha, the Vodou, Arusi, Ntoro, Ntorotu speaking through them. Now, so when they saw the pelican, saw the children of the great mother pelican being fed by the great mother, and then they go into convulsions after they're fed that nourishment and so forth, and they saw the capacity for us to go into possession and then speak the words of the divinities, a direct parallel. Now, after giving and receiving the energy of the Ntoro, the goddess, the healer or healeress, goes into convulsions, spirit possession. When they begin to speak, their declarations are messages from the deities and ancestral spirits. Of course, this practice continues in the Hoodoo Akan tradition. Hoodoo is the Akan tradition in North America. Juju is the Yoruba tradition in North America. Wanga is the Ovambo tradition in North America. Voodoo is the Evian tradition in North America. And Gangan or Fang traditions in North America. We say a prominent example is Nana Abena Aramita, quote unquote, Harriet Tubman. One of the reasons that we use this specific image on the flyer. This is a recently revealed and unveiled statue of Nana Abena Aramita, who we call Nana Abena Aramita, so-called Harriet Tubman, in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's near what they call the Harriet Tubman Bridge by the Combahee River. The Combahee River is where Nana Abina Araminta led a regiment of 700, soldiers during the Civil War. She was the first woman to lead a regiment of a number of soldiers during the, Civil War, led them into enemy territory because she knew her way around and so forth. And they liberated 700 of our people. That's the 700 number who were enslaved, and they freed them during that war, time and so forth. So that happened. They call it the Combahee River Raid. And she led that regiment. They successfully freed 700 people and so forth. There's a bridge over the Combahee River, which is near Beaufort, South Carolina, not far from Edisto Beach and so forth. And they just unveiled a statue of her right in that region. That is a region where we go to. And in fact, I'll show you something really quickly. Okay, we're going to show you something from our Hoodoo film from that specific region. Okay, so in October, we released our second documentary film. It's a full-length feature film called Hoodoo, Khanit Ancestral Religion in North America. You can watch that film for free on this page, the YouTube, page on Odwirafo page on YouTube and so forth. But I just wanted to show you a portion of that where we're talking about the Combahee River Raid and so forth. And this is the film right here. So we would go to Edisto Island every year for our Happy Merit retreat. We give offerings at Epo Abena, great divinity of the ocean and so forth. But this is the Combahee River raid that we were talking about. But we go to that specific river. This is the Combahee River where she conducted that raid and freed 700 of our people. They created a bridge, which is right there, the Harriet Tubman Bridge. But we give offerings to the ancestresses and ancestors who transitioned there, as well as at the ocean. Of course, there are sacred, the dolphins are there. The female divinity, Hat Mahit, is the divinity that governs that force in creation. Of course, there's the pelican, Henet, and there are Henetu pelicans on Edisto Island. So that energy of the Great Mother Henet is prominent on Edisto Island when we go there and we give offerings at the ocean where our ancestresses and ancestors' bones. So some of them are at the bottom of the ocean and so forth. But we just wanted to show that. That's every February. We go to Edisto Island for our Happy Meri spiritual, cultural, and ritual retreat. And that's part of the. But that's one of the reasons that we showed the flyer of Nana Abena Araminta Harriet Tubman is because she would fall into possession. She would fall into convulsions. Once she was possessed by the Abosom, the deities, and the Nsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors, she would come forward with messages about what direction they needed to go, where she needed to lead the people, to lead them out of enslavement, free them. She freed hundreds and hundreds of our people, and she was never caught. She'll talk about the Underground Railroad and so forth, and she was a conductor, quote unquote, but she'll say she never lost a passenger because she was led by the Nsamanfo, by the Abosom, including Asaseafu, the fertile earth mother in this region of the earth mother's body, and Asaseya, the barren earth mother, and so forth. Listen to them, listen to their guidance, became possessed when they'll say she had an epileptic fit. That's how the white snarl spring would, characterize it. We know it's Akom, spirit possession. When she came out of possession, she had the proper answers, direction, and that led our people to safety. So she is one of those ancient Hemaat Ntoro, one of those ancient priestesses, inherited that capacity directly from the ancient ancestresses who had that capacity, were born with that capacity that was transmitted to her, and she utilized it effectively. So now we're going to get into this notion of spirit possession, initiation, and so forth. So we say that in this article, she will fall into spirit possession, misnomer, epileptic convulsions, coming out of those spirit possession experiences with directives from the ancestresses and ancestors on what direction to lead the people. The pelican, Henet, is a sacred animal totem for Henet in Hoodoo, Voodoo, Juju, Wanga, and Gangain today. So again, when we talk about Akan Ancestral Religion of the Akan people of Ghana and Ivory Coast, when Akan people were forced into North America, we continued Akan Ancestral Religion under the Akan term Undu. Undu in the Akan language means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. And Undu in Akan came to be pronounced Hoodoo, and we continued Hoodoo as the Akan religion. But the Yoruba continued ancestral religion under the Yoruba term Juju in North America. The Juju man, the Juju woman is the Yoruba man, the Yoruba woman. The Hoodoo man and Hoodoo woman in North America is the Akan man, the Akan woman. The Voodoo man and Voodoo woman is the Eve man and Eve woman. The Wanga man and the Wanga woman, throwing the Wanga and so forth, are the Ovambo man and Ovambo woman. The Ngangain man and Ngangain woman is the Fang man and Fang woman from Cameroon and Gabon. When you see Ngangain as a title of a ritual specialist, is Nganga in the Congo, is Ngangain amongst the Fang people, F-A-N-G, of Gabon and Cameroon, which many of our people were Fang ancestry and were forced into North America. And Ngangain, as well as Gang Gang, is the title. And now you hear people saying gang, gang, as though talking about a street gang and so forth. And they're chanting gang, gang, that's gang, gang. That's an ancient title for a ritual specialist in the Fang language. So if you start studying the Fang language of Gabon and Cameroon, you will come across Ngangai or Ngangang, and you'll see the ritual connotation. So we say it must be underscored that this capacity for spirit possession and the sacred title Henet exists within and functions through the Afuraitkaitnit, African Black woman only, not Asians, not Hindus, not Arabs, not white Hispanics, not Europeans, only our people, period. But also that includes our people here in North America. Now, when we talk about, a second. All right. Okay, so when we get back to the Hemaat Ntoro, so we went through that detailed analysis, the wife of the divinity, Hemaat, the wife Ntoro of the divinity, in Amen, the wife of the God, Amen, and so forth, or the wife or a counterpart of the deity Men, also the wife or a servant of the female divinity, Hetheru or Amenet or, Sechima, Sekhmet, and so forth. This is the title, the wife of the divinity. So that same structure you find in our traditions still today. In the Akan tradition, when someone is training to be an Okomfo, The term Okomfo is a class of priest or priestess. The trainee is called Okomfoa. Okomfoa, that's a trainee. And they're considered the Oyere, the wife of the Abosom. In the Yoruba tradition, when someone is going through the process of being trained as an Olorisha, one who's going to be a priest or priestess of the Orisha and so forth, they are called Iyawo. Iyawo means a bride. So Iyawo Orisha means the bride of the Orisha. So this notion that you're married to the divinity, that was not just in ancient Kemet. That same concept you find in the Akan tradition, Yoruba tradition, and it continued in North America. So we say the same is true in the Hoodoo religion, which is Akan ancestral religion in North America. The female Hoodoo rootwork or conjure woman is considered to be the wife of the Hoodoo spirit deity she works with. She is married to the spirit. That's a term we use in the Hoodoo tradition, married to the spirit. And is thus considered to have two husbands, an earthly husband and a spirit deity husband. When working with a female divinity, she is recognized as the living vessel of that deity. So, now, we say the sacred role of the Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity, is central to our spiritual stability as an Afuraitkaitnit or African Oman or nation community, as a living shrine for a deity. The Hemaat Ntoro magnifies the power, the divine power and consciousness of the divinity for the benefit of the community. So what are we talking about? This notion of magnification of, power. The Oriya, the sun shines on us, plant life, animal life, mineral life, warms up the earth and so forth. So this notion of magnification, that is true of physical shrines, but it's also true of living shrines of the divinities. That includes the Hemaat Ntoro, that includes the queen, mother, the priestess, and so forth. So look at a physical shrine. Even before that, if you have the sun, if you go outside, it's 90 degrees outside. There's some leaves on the ground. They are warm, they're dry because they fell off the trees and so forth. The sun is shining on you, shining on the leaves. If you touch the leaf, it's dry, it's warm because the sun is beating down on it. Now, if you take a magnifying glass and place it in between the sunlight and the leaf or leaves, and you position it in a certain way, the sunlight moves through the glass, and once it moves through the glass, it becomes particularized, pointed in a certain fashion and so forth. It becomes magnified through the magnifying glass, and you can cause the leaves to combust. The output of the solar orb has not changed. You simply captured the energy in a device that magnified the energy in a specific point, and it caused an explosion of energy. When we establish an Nkomre, a shrine for the Nsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors, or an Nkomre, a shrine for the Abosom, the deities, the goddesses and gods and so forth, those physical shrines become magnifying devices for the energy of that divinity. So when they project their energy in the space, when you engage in ritual song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, ritual chant, ritual libation and so forth, when you engage in some form of ritual to invoke the divinities or evoke the ancestral spirits, and the spirits come down and so forth, when you have a shrine space, it magnifies the energy in that space. So even though their energy is, the energy of the forces in creation are all over creation. The spirit that animates the sun, the male or female divinities, you go outside, their energy is, projected upon you and so forth. The spirits that animate the moon, their energy is enveloping you and so forth. The same thing with the spirits that animate the atmosphere, the earth mother and everything else. But when you establish a shrine, a stable space, particularized to the dictates of the divinity, then you invoke them, you magnify their energy in that specific space. And it's more powerful and optimal in that space, no different than the magnifying glass literally magnifies the power of the sun in that specific space, and they can be directed to that space. That energy is fully magnified in that space of that shrine house. And when people enter that space, then they're affected by that dispensation of energy that's been magnified. If they need to realign something physiologically for health reasons, or reconstruct, realign their spirits if they're out of order and so forth, to get back on track spiritually, when you've magnified that energy in the space and they embrace that energy and they're enveloped by that, they can realign and recalibrate themselves with that magnified force in that space, physically, spiritually, and consciously. So that's what we're talking about with this notion of magnifying the energy. Now, the Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity, the priestess, is a living vessel, just like the animate shrine, the inanimate shrines, and so forth, where she is an animate shrine. Just like you can establish a sculpture and invoke the divinity, and the spirit will come down, take up residence in that sculpture or statue, and we can communicate directly with that force. No different than on a mundane level, a cell phone. Once it's connected, you can utilize that phone to connect with people, thousands of miles away. You can speak to them through that device. We started that back in the, thousands of years ago when we set up sculptures of male and female divinities and ancestral spirits. Once we invoke them and make the connection, then we can communicate with these forces through these devices. So, animate shrines are the same way. But then the physical person is a living, or inanimate shrines are the same way, but the animate shrine, the living vessel, the queen mother, the priestess, she's a living vessel. She magnifies the energy of the divinity via the process of spirit possession and spirit communication. We say it is by this means that the Ntoro to the divinities, Abosomorisha the deities who are the divine spirit forces in creation, the embodiments of divine order, have their energy and consciousness magnified within the community, within the communal sphere. Their divinely ordered energy and consciousness, once magnified in the family and community, brings order to disordered situations, disease, crime, suffering, political instability in the communal body of our people. The fusion of the Ntoro, the divinity, with the Hemaat Ntoro is a creative process. New developmental and innovative ideas are birthed in the population while healing and restoration, including restoration of order through warfare with the enemy for the preservation of the communal body, are benefits of this creative process. So let's look at that creative process. And we're going to switch over right quick to another one of our articles. Okay, so this is the Akom and Nkom, Spirit Possession and Spirit Communication article, Key to Understanding Cosmology. So this is a symbol from ancient Kemet, the Ba, which is the spirit hovering over the deceased body of the person and so forth. Okay. So the terms Akom and Nkom in the Akan language reference spirit possession and spirit communication. Very important concepts because, as we're going to see, initiation in the context of initiation to a divinity or ancestral spirit or society and so forth, initiation is inaugurated by the divinity getting inside the body of the person. Initiation is not about going to someone and they, perform rituals for you, give you certain vessels and so forth, and engage in ritual prayers and, cleansings and all of that. That simply facilitates what the deity is going to do him or herself. But initiation is when the divinity, him or herself, decides to enter into the spirit body of the person and operate within the body of the person. That is initiation. So no one can give you a divinity. If someone says, well, this person gave a person an Orisha, gave them an Abosom, they can give you a shrine, but they can't give you a force in nature. Only Nyamewa and Nyame, Amenet, and Amen, the great mother and great father, supreme being, can assign a divinity to you. And they do that pre-incarnation before you even incarnate into the world. We're assigned to specific divinities that govern our head and our matriclan and patriclan. And then we come into the world with those divinities. And if we are slated and structured to function as a living vessel for those divinities, to operate through within the communal sphere, to function as a priest or a priestess, Okomfo, Okomfowa, or Abosomfo, and so forth, then they will possess at the right particular time. We will go into training if we have someone there to train us. If we do not, they will train us because they will possess, and we're going to get into that, but they are the ones who inaugurate the initiatory process. So now, so spirit possession, as we say, that is the foundation. Our ancestresses and ancestors in ancient Khanit and Kamit fully engage the process of spirit possession and spirit communication. That is the foundation of ancestral religious practice. One cannot claim to have any real knowledge of the cosmology of ancient Khanit and Kamit, or just ancestral religion in general, without having an active relationship with the same deities that the people, our people of ancient Khanit and Kamit, possessed and communicated with in order to learn the order of creation and replicate that divine order to establish civilization. So the major deities we worship in ancient Kamit and Khanit are the divine spirit forces that animate creation. They are still worshipped. They still possess, communicate, heal, divine, etc. today within Afuraitkaitnit communities, wherever we exist upon Asasi Afu, the Earth Mother, and so forth. So, of course, people who practice tradition, they know that. We can show in the language of the Akan, as well as Yoruba, Vodou, and in many of our books, we go into detail about that. The same deities by the same names that you find in the texts of ancient Kemet are still invoked by the same names in Akan culture today. Same deities, same functions, same features of creation, all of that. Same in the Yoruba tradition, same in the Igbo tradition, same in the Ewe tradition, same in the Luba tradition, and so forth. Now, and we were making a point here because of some misinformation that's been propagated by certain individuals. One can't claim to be an authority on the Abosom, having never been possessed nor communicated directly with the Abosom. You can't claim to be an authority on the Orisha, having never been possessed by nor communicated directly with the Orisha. You can't claim to be an authority on the Vodou, having never been possessed by nor communicated directly with the Vodou. So, the same is true of people who are pontificating about ancient Kemet and the deities and cosmology and so forth, and they've studied atheism and science and physics and so forth, and trying to relegate our traditions to just expressions of psychological principles or principles of physics or quantum physics or things like that, because they cannot communicate with the actual divinities. So they'd rather pretend like the deities don't really exist. They're just symbols. They're just reflecting the fact that they don't have the capacity to engage with the forces in nature in real time. So you don't look to these individuals who have no real knowledge of the culture as authorities. That's absurd. And we've never done that. So we were talking about that principle in that section. We're talking about cosmology, but in the Akan language, Kom, and this Akan dictionary, this particular Akan dictionary was, they started publishing it or writing it in like the 1800s, the mid-1800s, 1840s and 50s, going into the forest, asking our people what these terms mean and so forth. So compiling this dictionary, And it's important to note that when they go into the forest in the 1840s and 50s and say, what is the term for possession? They'll say calm. What is the word for dog? And say okramai. What's the word for bird? Anoma. You know, they're learning these words and compiling these dictionaries. Now, when you look at a term like calm in Akan, komu, it says to dance wildly in a state of frenzy or ecstasy, ascribed by the natives to the agency of a fetish, meaning a deity, to be possessed with a fetish. Kom comes from ka, mu, to enter, to penetrate. Ka means to go, mu means within. So komu means to ko, go, mu, within. Komu, contracted to kom, to go within, to enter, to penetrate. That is possession. You also see it means to bend, to bow, incline, to turn aside. When someone gets possessed, they become heavy with the spirit. They bend, bow, incline, and so forth. That is spirit possession. Calm, to possess. Calm, to bend, to bow, to incline. Going to show once again, let's show a quick image of that. Go back to our Hoodoo film real quick. We're talking about the Okomfo. Process. So typically when you see an Akan priest or priestess dancing around in a circle, they have powder on their bodies, they spin around as the drums are playing and explode into a possession state. That is the Okomfo or Okomfoa. That term Okomfoa, one of the group of people, fo, who engages the Kom state. The Kom state means possession. Okay. In Akan language, Kom or Komu is the root of the term. In the Akan language, Kom means to penetrate. So we were talking about the definition of Kom and Kom fo and so forth. The wheel. There are two entities in the vessel, in the vehicle. And then you see that same process. You bend or bow or incline or turn aside, so they take control of this vessel. Maintained in North America as well. They lay hands, they heal, they teach, they admonish, they guide, they inform, they... Okay, so, but getting back to, hold on a second. So I just want you to see a, actual visual of that. So to dance, they say dance wildly in a state of frenzy or ecstasy, possessed by a divinity, to bend, to bow, incline, to be possessed, and all of that. Now, calm. Look in the language of ancient Kemet. To bend, to bow, to submit, to bend away, and so forth. Same definition, same term. They're going into the forest in the 1840s and asking these people who are sitting in the forest, what does it mean when the spirit comes down and you get possessed? They say, well, that's calm. To bend, to bow, and be possessed, calm. Thousands of years ago, you look on the walls of Kemet, calm, to bend, to incline, to, bend away and so forth, to submit and all of that. Then we go a little bit further. Kema was really koma. Once again, they would stick an E in between consonants if they didn't know the vowel placement. But in the Akan language, we have the proper vocalization. We have the proper vowel placement. This circular symbol is the Siev, which is the K sound. They'll spell it KH. The little owl is the M. So this is K and M. And the form with the open palm is the A sound. So that's K, A. So they didn't know if it was Kema, Koma, Kema, Kuma, Kima. But in Akan, it's actually Kom, Koma. What does it mean? To grasp. You see the little hand grasping the egg right here? So you see that hand grasping the egg? That's the Kema, but it's really pronounced Koma. And you'll see in Akan, well, you see to grasp, to seize, to lay, to hold upon, to hold, to possess. So koma in ancient Kemet means to possess. Kom means to bend, to incline, to submit, and so forth. Kom in Akan or komu means to possess. Kom means to bend, to incline, and so forth, to dance in a state of frenzy or ecstasy, and so forth. Same two definitions in Akan, preserved thousands of years after we were using the same terms with the same two definitions in ancient Kemet. Unbroken tradition. Akom, the state of being possessed with a fetish. They use the term fetish meaning a deity. And then says a temporary madness or ecstasy expressing itself in dancing and wild gestures and ascribed by the natives to the agency of a fetish. They're talking about a divinity, of course. And then you have Kom, which is spirit communication, oracle communication. So Akom, spirit possession, Kom, spirit communication. You can pour libation, sit in front of a shrine, a deity manifest. You can see them clairvoyantly or hear them clairaudiently. They communicate, and you tell the person the spirit is here. She looks like this. She just said that. That is Kom, spirit communication. Akom, spirit possession, when the spirit gets in your body and possesses and speaks through you. You're the living vessel. You see Kom, to embrace. Kom also means neck or throat. And you also see Akom, hunger and so forth. And that's related to the throat space, is also called Kom Bere, the place Bere of hunger, the Akom and so forth. And then the root of Kom is Ka, or we say Ka and Mu. Let's go back up. Kom is Ka, Mu. To go, Ka, within, Mu. But that root is Ka, your spirit is going. It's going down, or the spirit is coming. We'll say the spirit is coming, the spirit came down, or the spirit's about to come down. It's Komu, coming within and all that. So that root, Ka, look at how it's described when they sat in the forest in the mid-1800s and so forth. Kamu, the root is Ka, to dance wildly in a state of frenzy or ecstasy. When they looked in the language of ancient Kemet, the root Ka, to fall into an ecstasy, to prophesy during a frenzy. And then we'll see so when they say to dance wildly in a state of frenzy or ecstasy, ascribed by the natives to the agency of a fetish or divinity, to perform the actions or practices of a divinity, to prophesy, to soothsay, to foretell. He prophesies, also she prophesies, and so forth. That's in the Akan language. And then when they translated the language of ancient Kemet, Ka, to fall into an ecstasy, to prophesy during a frenzy. So, same terms, same multi-tiered metaphysical and cosmological definitions intact, because we're practicing the same tradition, we're being possessed by the same divinities, we are using the same terms, unbroken for thousands of years. We have, in many of our books, we've published 31 books to date. Many of our books, we are showing the parallels between the language of the Akan people and the language of ancient Kemet. You can take an Akan dictionary and a Hemaat Ntoro, or a hieroglyphic dictionary, and find thousands of the same words, same meanings, same pronunciations, same deities, same functions, and so forth, because we're the same people. Now that we know those principal definitions. We deal with transcarnational inheritance, and this gets to this notion of the Spiri-Genetic inheritance of the Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity, the priestess, how you've inherited that practice through your Spiri-Genetic blood circle. You don't have to travel to the continent or travel to the Caribbean to receive that. It was seeded within you before you even incarnated. When you understand actual true cosmology, before we incarnate into the womb, we are sent to Inyamewa and Inyame. We're given our divine function, our Nkrabia. We're given the capacity to execute that function, the She and Shibia. We're assigned the Okra, the divinity that governs the Kra, the Kradim bosom. Also the Abusia bosom, the matriclan divinity, and the Eja bosom, the patriclan divinity. And that structure of the divinity that governs the head, the matriclan divinity and patriclan divinity, those combine to make you a unique individual. And then you are sent into the womb. And then eventually you are born into the world. You are born into the world already assigned to these specific abosom or Orisha Vodou. And if you are someone who is slated to function as a vessel within the community for divination or ritual practices and so forth, at some point at the proper time, that abosom will make himself or herself known through various forms in a series of possessions. And that will indicate to the individual that it's time to begin functioning as a vessel for the community. If you have people in the community to help facilitate that process, to help you learn how to navigate that process, that's a priestesshood, they can assist you. But if you do not have that, because we find ourselves in an area where some people, many of our people were brainwashed with Christianity and Islam and Judaism or white culture, and we stopped practicing and so forth. So the people who normally would have been priests and priestesses are not functioning like that. Then the divinities will still engage the spirit possession process. That is the initiatory process of priestesshood. And they will show you, as well as put you in position to connect with those in your blood circle who still practice tradition. So how does that process play out? Now we get into transcarnational inheritance. This is a okom or abosomfo in possession in Ghana and so forth. But there's a proverb. Abosom na etchere okomfua ntwaho. It is the abosom, the deity, that teaches the okomfo, the priest or priestess, to ntwaho, to whirl around. So you saw that okomfo spinning around in possession in the film and so forth. They said the proverb is, it is the abosom that shows or teaches, etchere, teaches or shows the okomfo, the priest or priestess, how to whirl around. It's not another individual priest or priestess. It's the deity who teaches you. The other priest or priestess can be an assistant and attendant to watch you, to help guide you, so you can learn how to handle these possessions when this energy comes down on your body and so forth. But it's the divinity who teaches you. Now, so when we're breaking down the proverb, we show that, of course, abosom is divinity, etchere means to show or teach, okomfo, a class of priest or priestess. We also have abosomfo and other classes and so forth. Ntwaho, the ritual spinning movements that akomfo perform during akom, spirit, possession, dance, and so forth. And an akan, abosom, is a term for deities. As we said in Yoruba, it's Orisha or Irunmole. In Ewe, it's the Vodou. And ancient Kemet, Ntoro and Ntoro too, but that term Ntoro is also the term in Akan as well. So we talk about that Ebe or proverb is a divine wisdom teaching. It talks about it's the abosom who, upon possessing the individual, directs the individual's movements. And we just talked about this, how we have a specific function to execute in creation that is assigned to us and written into our spirits and the soul, the divine consciousness, before we enter into the world. So we come into the world with a divine function, and we are assigned specific forces in nature that we are representatives of, who we carry their energy into the human sphere, the Afuraitkaitnit human sphere. We carry, if you're a child of a fiery divinity, you carry that fiery energy into our communal sphere. If you're a watery divinity, you bring that cool, watery energy into the communal sphere. If you're an earthy divinity, you bring that energy into the human sphere, the communal sphere, our people, of course, only. Afuraitkaitnit, black people only, of course, into our communal sphere. So every energetic force is represented, just like it's represented in creation. In the communal sphere, every force is represented by, people who are children of those divinities. Just like in the animal realm, you have certain animals who are fiery. They're animal totems for fiery divinities. Certain animals are totems for water divinities. Certain animals are totems for earth divinities and so forth. The same with plant totems, the same with mineral totems. So you have plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afuraitkait, human life. You have animal totems, lions, cobras, falcons, and so forth, who are children of different divinities. You have plant totems that are associated with specific forces in creation, fiery plants that help with anti-inflammatory, practices and so forth. Or you have watery plants and others. So you have plant totems. You have mineral totems. Certain minerals have fiery energy. Certain minerals have cool energy and so forth. Minerals representing the different forces in creation. And then you have human totems. We are the totems for the deities. Some of us are a totem for a fiery divinity, some totems for atmospheric divinities, some are totems for earth divinities, and so forth. So we talk about that conveys a key principle. Now, just wanted to pull up. I'm sure I didn't miss this point. Okay. So we say for us in America, Afuraitkaitnit, Africans in America, this proverb conveys a key principle of our reality. As Afuraitkait, meaning African people, the Abosom, the deities connected to us via Kra Nemoja, soul and blood, are those who have remained with us transcarnationally through successive incarnations. This includes our incarnation through our descendants during and after the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. So the ancient Abosom, the forces in nature, who existed before the coming into being of Nipa human beings and later first possessed our people, Afuraitkaitnit people, our people only, of course. Only Black people can be possessed by the forces in creation. Non-Black individuals, white Europeans, Arabs, Hindus, Asians, pseudo-Native Americans, they only communicate with their deceased relatives. And some of them try to pretend that communication with their deceased relatives offers communication with deities. Of course, that is fraudulent. Only the Afuraitkait people, African Black people, wherever we exist in the world, have the capacity and the physiological and spiritual anatomy to be possessed by and communicate with the forces in creation. So now, just like they possessed us thousands of years ago, they continue to possess us, including in North America. When they possess, they teach Echere. We then incorporate what they teach, including forms of divination, medicine, knowledge about the mineral world, animal life, the planet, sun, moon, biology. And we subsequently transmit what we have learned from the Abosom to our family members and the Afuraitkait nation, and so forth. So we always ask the question when we're dealing with Kra Nemoja, and we are talking about initiation and spirit possession, who initiated the first priest or priestess when there were no priests or priestesses to initiate them? How did they become a priest or priestess if there were no priests or priestesses? Some people never even considered that reality. Those who practice tradition already know. The deities possess. There's a proverb in the Akan tradition they talk about. There's a proverb about a man named Chumasi. They said if Chumasi had not gone into the Akom state or went Odaim, quote unquote, mad, and they became normal again, we would not have had Akom worship. They saw an individual named Chumasi. He was acting normal. Then all of a sudden, he started acting what they call Odaim. The term Odaim means mentally ill. So he started convulsing and acting differently and so forth. And at first, people thought that he was Odaim, mentally ill. But then he was in that state for a minute, and then he came out of that state and got back to normal just like anybody else. And then they realized whenever Chumasi went into that state, he wasn't manifesting these convulsions because he was Odaim. He was going through a specific process. And that process came to be called the Kom process, or Akom. They realized he was being possessed. If Chumasi had not gone Odaim, quote unquote, mad and become normal again, they say we would not have had Akom worship. He was possessed by a divinity, ancestral spirit, started operating like that, giving messages, and then he would come back to himself. And they would say, hey, what just happened? He didn't know. But those messages that came through, they realized he was communicating from the spirits of the ancestresses and ancestors and the divinities. The first person to be possessed, the first male or female, that's the first initiation. So if you don't have anybody in your family, because everybody's Christians and Muslims and everything else, or atheists in the Western Hemisphere, yet you were born into the world to function as a vessel of the divinities, that function still exists. It doesn't matter if people in your family are not doing or practicing what they need to practice. That function still exists. If you were to be a Odun Sinifo, a root worker and so forth, that function exists. So what do we do in North America? The Odun Sinifo, which is translated literally as root worker, Odu Sinfo, or Odun Sini, that became Hoodoo Sini, the hoodoo or the root worker and so forth. They went out into the forest, learned from the forces in nature and their ancestresses and ancestors the medicinal use of these different plants and minerals, and they functioned as root workers. If the divinity said, pick this herb for this particular illness, they'll pick that herb and give it to the person, and the possession would happen. The spirit would prepare the herb. People will watch how the spirit prepared the herb, and then they would replicate that, notate that and so forth, preserve that information. And they just learned a new skill from a divinity through spirit possession. We also come in contact with plant life, animal life, and mineral life in the Western Hemisphere that we did not encounter on the continent. So we had to learn from the divinities. This particular animal, like a possum, for possum bone divination in Hoodoo, we've never seen a possum because they don't exist where we come from on the continent. So what is this animal? What divinity governs this animal? Can we use this animal's bones for divination? If we can, how do we do that? The Abosom show us how to do that. We incorporate that as part of our ritual practice, and that becomes part of the Akan tradition in North America. Everything that we knew when we came over here, we continue to practice. In addition to that, we added more practices based on the plant life, animal life, mineral life we encountered here that was different from what we had there. So we had to learn directly from the forces of nature, directly from our Nsamanfo. So initiation is about spirit possession, direct communication from the forces that govern all of creation. They download that information, dispense that energy within us, that tumi within us, and we utilize that to recalibrate our people. Now, so we want to go back. So then we go back to this notion of the Afuraitkaitnit woman who was born with the function of Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity, came into the world, and you know that's your function, but then you're born in America, and maybe nobody's practicing that tradition. So let's look at that process. We say we have Afuraitkaitnit, meaning African Black women in our clans who have inherited this central, sacred, and integral function of Hemaat Ntoro. And remember, Hen. So we give an example. Within the shrine, they invoke the spirit of the Ntoro, the deity, through ritual offering, feeding the divinity. They also fuse with the Ntoro via spirit possession, talking about the priestess. They work with the high priest of Amen, giving offerings to the Ntoro, the divinity, for the healing and internal stability of the nation. And also work with the high priest in the burning of wax figures of the enemy for the preservation of order. This ritual destruction will lead to the emboldening of the military when fighting wars against the enemy of Kamit in order to eradicate them under the direction of Amen and Amenet, the great father and great mother, supreme being. So you will find that the ritual function of the Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity, that high priestess, thus encompass the ritual regulation of the domestic and foreign affairs of the nation. We have Afuraitkaitinit, African Black women in our clans who have inherited this central, sacred, and integral function of Hemaat Ntoro, the ritual regulation of the domestic and foreign affairs of the nation. Hen, Henet, to command, to rule, to admonish. That's politically, as well as culturally, communally, and spiritually. So, yet in this society governed by the Odwirafo, the spirits of disorder, the whites and their offspring, the character, identity, and role of the female is inferiorized. Conversely, white females seek to inferiorize the role of the male. So that battle of the sexes is between the whites and their offspring. That's idiotic nonsense that comes from them. That's because of their perverse, dissexual, homosexual nature. They are in perpetual conflict as males and females. We have nothing to do with that foolishness. When we're in our right state of mind, there's a complementary balance between male and female when we're in our culture. As spirits of disorder, the whites and their offspring seek only to perpetuate that which they are an expression of. Cancerous cells in the body seek only to consume and destroy healthy cells until said cancerous cells are completely eradicated. The whites and their offspring, non-Black individuals, as cancerous cells in the body of Black humanity, have for thousands of years sought only to consume and destroy our people all over Asase Earth. This will continue until we eradicate them. They are not going to stop trying to convince them to see that racism is wrong. It's idiotic. They've been engaged in this process for thousands of years, incarnation after incarnation. Cancerous cells are not going to be convinced that, hey, being a cancerous cell is not really great. Maybe you should think about being a healthy cell once again. They become disfigured and they malfunction and seek only to consume and destroy the cancerous cells. So the immune system has a response. The immune system and lymphatic systems isolate the cancerous cells, destroy them, and expel them from the body for the preservation of the body. That's the response to cancerous cells. So, now, we say not only is the societal role of the Afuraitkaitnit, African female, inferiorized in white culture, but the pseudo-religions work to inferiorize the spirituality of the Afuraitkaitnit or African females. So, of course, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, pseudo-Native Americanism, and their pseudo-esoteric and exoteric expressions were fashioned by the whites and their offspring. They corrupted different fragments of our ancestral traditions, manufactured fake characters and so forth in these fake traditions, and repackaged them and represented them to us and so forth, represented them to us. And to the degree that we embrace them, we engaged in self-destructive pseudo-spiritual practices. So we have our women who are born in the Western Hemisphere who are ancestrally Hemaat Ntoro. You came into the world assigned with a specific divinity and a function to execute in the world, which is to serve as a vessel for that divinity, to bring that divinity's energy into the communal sphere, to plug in that deficit of energy within the communal sphere so people can function harmoniously, utilize that energy to build, to develop the nation and so forth, and also to bring, balance, recalibration when imbalance manifests. That's the function you came into the world with from the time you were sent into the womb. Then you're born into the world as a baby and so forth. You grow up, develop, grow up in a community that doesn't support that. You have this function, pre-incarnation by your direct ancestresses who executed this function in previous generations, yet they are not executing this function. You've grown, developed, adhered to the guidance of your ancestresses, of your matriclans, from which the function of the Hemaat Ntoro was inherited. You start rejecting pseudo-religions. You return to your ancestral traditions. However, the community is not caught up with you for the most part. So we say that such individuals who are developing and utilizing their capacity to heal, inspire, protect, defend, innovate, motivate, more often shied, ignored, or relegated to a category within the society wherein they are ridiculed and or inferiorized. So that's what's happening right now. People are born with this function. Sometimes they know instinctively, so they try to find that function in pseudo-religious practices. They end up in the church, they end up in the mosque, they end up in some shrine house, but then they see that these things are corrupted. Of course, the fake religions are nothing but corruption, but then sometimes they even find themselves in Orisha houses or Abosom Fie, houses of the Abosom or the Vodou and so forth. But people have brought that Eurocentric, corrupt, perverse mindset to the practice. So the women tend to be inferiorized, the males are elevated and so forth. Then you also have this inferiorization of our people here in North America, believing that we never preserved our traditions. So unlike those in Haiti or Cuba or Brazil or Guyana, who maintain their traditions like Candomblé or Lukumi or Haitian Vodun or Komfa in Guyana, or the various traditions, we've been convinced that we're the only people in the Western Hemisphere that did not preserve our traditions. So we can't practice ancestral religion unless we get up and travel to Afuraka, Afuraitkait, Africa, or to the Caribbean or South America to get a tradition from somebody else and bring it back to our community, because only Black people in America, we weren't intelligent enough to maintain our traditions, and we've inferiorized ourselves. And then we allow people from the continent of the Caribbean and other places to perpetuate that. And if we fall into that false belief, we think that we have no tradition, or the traditions that we do have are just fragments of a tradition, like a little bit of root work here and there, but it's not a real full tradition. But that's never been true. And the reason we produced our documentary, the first and the second documentary, is to prove that we maintained our priesthoods and priestesshoods intact for 300 plus years. So we're not dependent at all on initiation from the continent or the Caribbean or South America or anywhere. In fact, we are only legitimized in our ancestral religious practice if it comes from our Spiri-Genetic blood circles. If we cannot show how our ancestral religious practice as priests and priestesses in the Hoodoo tradition, Juju tradition, or whatever tradition we're in, comes directly from our Spiri-Genetic ancestresses and ancestors who passed on that tradition here for the past 300 plus years. Once we brought it from the continent, if we can't show that direct continuity of culture, then we're not practicing a legitimate expression of ancestral religion. What we're doing is we're just imitating our cousins. We're imitating our cousins on the continent or imitating our cousins in the Caribbean. But that is not what adults do. Just like they preserve their traditions, so did we. And it's incumbent upon us to embrace our traditions, fully investigate them, and embrace them. There are things that took place in the Western Hemisphere that, people on the continent didn't experience. Like we said, they've never seen a possum before living there. So when Arn Samafo showed us the deity that governs the possum is this abosom, this is how you utilize the bones for divination. We can practice divination with possum bones in the Western Hemisphere. And a Khan person from the continent, they could learn divination from us, and we can initiate them into that practice, but they can't initiate us into that priestesshood or priestesshood in the Hoodoo tradition. They can't initiate us into Hoodoo. We can initiate them if we wanted to, but they can't initiate us because we maintain this tradition. So, hold on one second. Let me get back to it. So this is what we're saying in this section of that article. We say, as the Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity in the past, the Hemaat Ntoro of today, those Afuraitkaitnit women who have that inherited capacity and charge. You have the capacity and the charge to engage in ritual invocation for the stability of the Afuraitkaitnit community, foster balanced relationships, administer large estates for the economic growth and development of our people, and more. Some of our people feel this enormous potential and drive towards these various expressions of their inherited sacerdotal function, yet have been misguided with regard to its authenticity. So these are some of the challenges that our people face, and specifically women who have that natural inclination to engage in these ritual practices and these communal functions, but didn't have a support system or didn't know that what they felt intuitively was authentic and legitimate and so forth, but it's part of your Spiri-Genetic inheritance, your transcarnational inheritance. We say that some of you know that your charge is great because intuitively you know that you are born Hemaat Ntoro, the wife of the divinity. As a vessel of the divinity, you will only be fulfilled when you consciously step into that role and embrace and execute that function. And you do so without apology and without permission from anybody, male or female, elder, quote unquote elder, or quote unquote elderess. When you embrace your function, your Nsamafo will direct you to those elders and eldresses within our blood circles and clans here in North America who have preserved tradition when you need some confirmation. But you move forward based on the divinity that governs you, the Nsamafo, your ancestresses and ancestors that have been with you since you were a child and even in previous incarnations. That's your authority. So, and this is what we talk about in this section. You're legitimizing your function by the Ntoro and Ntoro, the abosom with whom you are aligned. The divinity that governs your head, the Abusi abosom, your matriclan divinity, the Edge abosom, your patriclan divinity, and your matriclan ancestresses and ancestors. They transfer that capacity to function as Hemaat Ntoro to you through your Spiri-Genetic blood circle. Now, so that's what we're saying in that portion. All right, so that is in one of the articles on our website. In fact, I'll put that link in the chat room. It's same title, Hemaat Ntoro, wife of the divinity and so forth, wife of the god. So this is the article, placing that in the chat room on our WordPress site. We're also going to place in the chat room the link to our Homa page. All 31 of the books I've published. Today, you can download all 31 books for free. from our website. And then I'll put the SUSUW page in there as well. So, okay, I just want to check if you have any questions, of course, you can post them in the chat room. I just want to check and see. That is the information we want to share with you all tonight. Also, let me post the link to that article on Henet that we published. This is the Henet article about the etymology and cosmology of Queen and the divinity Henet and the sacred animal totem, the pelican, and so forth. Okay. So question, what do you feel about the term Al-Kabulan? Everybody keeps speaking of. So in our book, and let me just switch over to the book real quick. We just did a live session on this. So let me just switch over to it real quick. If you look in our recent video just a couple of days ago, we just did an entire live session on this. It was actually 2 hours and 40 minutes. This is one of the books I published, Afuraka, Afuraitkait, The Origin of the Term Africa. And in the book, in section 3, we go into the etymology of the word Al-Kabulan. And we're the first to show the etymology of the term Al-Kabulan because nobody knew what it meant. They heard Dr. Ben mention it as the original term for the continent. It is not the original term for the continent. It's actually an Arabic term, an Arabic corruption from El Gebalain, which means between the two mountains and so forth, which is taken from El Gabal, an ancient title, an ancient kanana of a title of the divinity El. El Gabal means El of the Gabal of the mountain, the old man of the mountain, and so forth. That is a title of Ra in ancient Kanana, which later became Israel and so forth. But when our people migrated into ancient Kanana and continued the practice of ancestral religion, they called Ra El and El Gabal and so forth, and El Gebalain became corrupted as El Kabulan and so forth. So we go through the entire cosmology and etymology showing that El Kabulan is an Arabic corruption, was never the original term. Afuraka, Afuraitkait is the masculine and feminine terms, which later came Afrika and so forth. Our entire book shows the etymology and cosmology of that. We show in fact, we go into some detail. I'll show you what we talked about the other day. Hold on a second. Just so you can see this. All right. So that's the flyer from the other night when we just did that 2 hour, 40-minute broadcast. So we're talking about Ra in the form of Afura and Ra'et in the form of Afuraitkait. So the word Ka means high land, land above the surface of the water and so forth. The first land to burst through the surface of the water to become the first land mass of earth. Ka on the masculine side, Ka'et on the feminine side. So the Ka of Afura is the land, Ka of Afura, the land of the creator. The Kayat of Afuraitkait is the land, Kayat of Afuraitkait, the land of the creatress. So we show in the Medutu, Afuraka, Afuraitkait, the origin of the term Africa. But we also go into detail about Al-Kabulan, and our book is the first to prove the etymological origin of the term Africa, etymology, cosmology, and so forth. But we're also the first to show the etymology of the term Al-Kabulan as well. All right. Okay. says there have been claims that the hieroglyphs have never been translated. Please point me to some literature to dispute these people. We did an, let me show this real quick as well. Okay, so one of the courses, and let's just pull that. So we have our Akongwaswea page. Akongwaswea is our institution. So in addition to, well, let me first show you the Nhoma page. So on the Nhoma page, the publications page on our website, you will see the 31 books that I published. So scrolling through this, of course, this is Afuraka. You just saw that book. So you can just scroll through and you'll see all the various books that we published. You can download all of them for free from the website and so forth. Now, in addition to the 31 books, we have our Akongwaswea institution page. We taught a number of different courses, online courses. All of them, except for one that's current right now, all of them are archived. We have 40 archived courses. Some of them were 4-week courses. Some of them were 6-week courses. Some were 7-week courses and so forth. So when you go to the Akongwaswea page, you'll see that this is the collage of all of the courses and so forth. When you scroll down, you'll see the original flyers for each course. And that includes, like, for example, the Aperu course, Hebrews Never Existed, Cosmology of the Crossover in Kamit. That was a 4-week course. The archive is available. You'll see the archive is $10 and you get access to the 4-week course. The books, of course, are free that we cover as well as the articles. But just so you can see, 2 of the courses, parts 1 and part 2, Hemaat Ntoro, Divine Inscription. So that is part 1, Hemaat Ntoro, Divine Inscription, Reading and Writing the Language and Hieroglyphs of Kamit. That was a 6-week online course. And then we did part 2 as well. That was also a 6-week course. Both of them are available. Each one is $15 and so forth. But you'll see that all those courses are on the page. But of course, the Hemaat Ntoro, when they say they have never been translated, there was never a time that they were not translated. Because Europeans didn't understand the language didn't mean that our people didn't understand the language. When they say they discovered how to read and write the Hemaat Ntoro, when they're in Kamit, in fact, just to show you, when they're in Kamit and when they started moving around Kamit and so forth, the people who are living in Kamit, the Black people who are still there, they still know how to read and write the language. They never stopped reading and writing the language. Some of them were forced into white culture and white Arab culture and forced into Islam, just like some of our people were forced, to practice Christianity and so forth over here. But we continue to practice hoodoo and so forth and still get possessed and still engage in root work. They still have their religious practices. So they never stopped speaking the language. They never stopped reading and writing the language. So when Europeans like the French and others came, they learned from some of those attendants who they were employing to help them carry statues and artifacts out of these tombs and so forth. They learned from them, what do these symbols mean? And some of them showed them what these symbols meant. And then they started publishing these things and started saying that they discovered how to read and write the Medutu. Our people never stopped practicing the reading and writing of the language. Only Europeans didn't know. It was a mystery to them, but it wasn't a mystery to our people. And people in amongst those who practice Afuraitkaitnit culture, African ancestral culture, or quote unquote African-centered or Afrocentric schools of, investigation and so forth, you find that they teach the reading and writing of the language, but in addition to just teaching the mechanics, we can show that we still speak the language. So we can compare the Akan language, Yoruba language, Igbo language, and so forth with the language of ancient Kemet in the same terms, same deities, same cosmology, is still alive and operant today. So we have a living practice. The same words used like Neter or Ntoro and Akan was used as Ntoro in ancient Kemet. We have the proper terms and the proper vocalizations that the whites and our spring don't have. So we have that added element because we have a living culture. The language is still alive. So those who say it's never been translated are simply saying they can't read and write the language. So they would rather pretend like nobody can because they're blocked from a certain level of understanding because they don't know how to read and write the language. They haven't committed themselves to study. So they rather pretend like it can't be translated. That covers for the fact that there's a lot of information they do not know. And instead of being embarrassed over the fact that they don't understand a lot of this information and this cosmology and so forth, they'd rather pretend like it's never been translated so their lack of knowledge can be, seen as standard. Instead of just, studying, they'd rather just pretend like nobody can understand, which is childish. All right. Okay, may I say for the super chat, Serene, we appreciate that. All right, I just want to make sure I didn't miss any questions before we end it. Okay, so it said my mother abandoned me as a child, and as a result, I felt unbalanced spiritually. I was told by my ancestors to align with my matriarchal abosome to balance myself out. My question is, how do you do so? When we are born to spiritually unbalanced parents, it is not our responsibility. Is it not our responsibility when we become adults to balance our spirits? The matrilineal patriarchal deities don't belong to our parents. So typically, and while I'm saying that, let me switch over real quick. I just want to show something. When we were talking about this notion of people not the reading and writing of the language. Okay, so when we did one of our study tours to Kemet, you'll see on our page the different videos that we did. So when we're visiting the Nubitu, the Nubian people in the south, Swing, Aswan, and so forth, these are the original people of Kemet. They still live in the south. Some live in the north too, but mainly in the south. These are the original Black people who still live there. They still work there. Yes, they speak Arabic and different dialects, but they also, some of them still practice their ancestral traditions. They still know how to read and write the language and so forth. And, they'll share that with certain people who they feel, is worthy to get that information. So we took the ferry across the river to Paraka, so-called Philae, the temple of Aset in Philae and so forth. We did that, but also visiting the home of one of the some of the Nubian villagers and so forth. And one of the things that they do is they raise crocodiles in their home until they get too large, and then they release them in the river. They have some of the skeletons of the crocodile heads and so forth. But Sobek, the ancient crocodile divinity, is a sacred animal totem for their force in nature. So they have the living shrine. We talked about animals as, living shrines of the divinities and so forth. So you will see that in the homes of the people. So they have the living crocodiles in the living room, in the little cages and so forth. But they also will let them out. So as you can see here, you see the alligators or the crocodiles and so forth. Now, just to give an example of the living culture and people practicing the living tradition. You see these children, Nubian children, Nubitu, standing on top of the crocodiles, just like we have pets and so forth. And then you see the child Heru standing on top of the crocodiles and holding the serpents and scorpion and so forth. Now, a European would say, or a European pseudo-metaphysicist would say, oh, that the child Heru represents the purified energy, the innocence of the child and so forth. That innocent energy can control the negative animal instinct within us, and standing on top of the crocodiles represents, controlling our lower animal nature and having influence over that negative animal lustful nature. And it's a metaphor for that. And what it's really saying is they don't know what they're talking about. Because they don't know that we really have a relationship with the divinity Sobek, whose sacred animal totem is the crocodile. So therefore, we can deal with Sobek's children and infuse the energy of Sobek when we interact with that divinity's animal totem and interact in a harmonious fashion and absorb that energy and wield that energy in the community. They don't know anything about that, so they have to pretend like they're, tuning into the deeper science of the symbolism, but it's not even symbolism, it's real life. The children are interacting and standing on the crocodiles. And they'll sit on a crocodile just like you sit on a horse and the horse, carries you, or a camel. They'll sit on the crocodile and the crocodile will carry them. So they can wield that energy. And as a matter of fact, let me show you one more. When you see these symbols of the Het Heru and so forth with the great crown, let me show an image of Het Heru. Or in fact, let me show one from the Sankofa Tahuti book that we published. So this is another one of the books we published, and we're showing the relationship, for example, when we talk about the language of Kemet and so forth, Tahuti. He's also called Fan in ancient Kemet. He's called Fa in Yoruba, or in Vodun, Ifa in Yoruba. He's called Afa or Fa in Vodun. He's called Sankofa in Akan and so forth. But we're talking about the relationship between Tahuti and Het Heru and the Sankofa symbol. So you see, hold on a second. All right, so you'll see Het Heru, she'll have the cow's ears, she'll wear the crown with the cow's horns and so forth, sometimes shown with the face of the cow. You see her face with the cow's ears. She governs the fallopian tubes, the Het Heru, the house of Heru, and so forth. We showed that the Sankofa symbol is the symbol of Het Heru and so forth. She governs the cow. The cow's face and horns are, the fallopian tube structure, the great face of Het Heru is inside the womb of the woman, the face of the cow. But you also see not only when she wears the cow's horns, but we have a relationship with the sacred animal totem. These are the great cows in Uganda and so forth. We have a relationship with them. And in fact, let me show you this, this clip. Trying to see if I had it in the right spot. Hold on a second. Give me a second. This is not, let's see if I can. If not, I'll just show you the image, but I was trying to see if I can find that clip real quick. Well, actually, we'll just the image itself. Okay. So once again, the symbolism of the great horns of the cow and so forth is not some sacred symbolism that represents a quote unquote deeper principle. We have a relationship with these forces and these animal totems. So you don't see any fear within the small child walking in the midst of all these animals with these great horns and so forth, and they don't fear the child either. Because we live in harmony with the forces in creation and their sacred animal totems and the energy that they dispense to us. So that's something that the whites in Alice Springs, they don't have the capacity to deal with. But when it comes to the matriclan and patriclan divinities, just like you go with normally you learn culture from your parents and you talk about, parents, grandparents and so forth, if they're not involved in the culture, then you go to your other grandparents, which are your great, great, great grandparents. So we get that directly from our Nananom Nsamafo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, because they are the ones who preserved the tradition. They established the traditions, they preserved it. So normally we get, confirmation from them, but we learn the tradition directly from our parents and grandparents. And they are informed by the Nsamafo ancestral spirits as well. But when you're in a position where parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles are practicing fake traditions or not involved, then you get the tradition directly from their grandparents, which are your great-great-grandparents and so forth, and they give you the tradition uncut. And then they'll put you in position to come across people to confirm what you were given spiritually. They'll confirm it physically. But it starts off with establishing a strong relationship with your Nsamanfo, your Nanano Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of your Spiri-Genetic blood circle. That's where it begins. Okay, you talked about listening to the sounds of the ga, which is the goose and gander, and the sounds of the animal totem will help to recalibrate your spirit. So when we talk about, not only the dances of the animals, so when you see someone, ritual drums playing, they move their body in the form of a serpent, and they get possessed, and they move their body in the form of a serpent or a gazelle or, a lion or a leopard or whatever it is. The animal totem, the energy that the divinity carries, manifest through that animal totem, and we are human totems for the divinities, move our bodies in the form of these animals to wield or provoke that energy. So if Benna, the divinity, sacred animal totem, is the Jata, the lion, we move in the form of the lion, we provoke the energy through that lion form of the deity Benna, and so forth. But the same thing happens not only when we engage in ritual movement to invoke the divinities through the movement of our bodies, we also provoke the divinities through ritual song, ritual chant, ritual prayer, ritual movement, ritual dance, and so forth. But also, as you said, the ritual sounds of the animal totems provoke the energy of the divinity that the animal totem is connected to. So listening to the sounds of certain animal totems aligns you with the energy of the Abosom, the divinity that governs it. So that's another piece. Okay. Okay, so the final thing we want to show you. Give me a second. Okay, so for those who are unaware, if you haven't seen the flyer or the trailer, hold on a second. The SUSUW flyer next Awukuda, next Wednesday, which is July 10th, our second Meditation Instructor Certification course begins. We're finishing up the first course next week on Tuesday, July 9th. So those who are in that course, they'll be finishing and they'll be receiving their certification. If you would like to join the next certification course to become an instructor, certified as an instructor in SUSUW, which is meditation, then you can register for that course, which begins next Wednesday, July 10th, and it goes from July 10th through July 31st. And at the end of the course, you receive your certification. So the reason why we are teaching this course, to give people an opportunity to be certified in SUSUW, which is meditation from our ancestrally inherited culture. Meditation, or SUSUW is the term for meditation in our Khan culture, as well as ancient Kemetic means the same thing. But this predates India by thousands of years and so forth. We've been practicing SUSUW or meditation from a grounded cultural perspective for tens of thousands of years. So when you look at the information and when they talk about SUSUW or meditation, it's utilized to enhance learning outcomes, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety and depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles and short and long-term goals, and so forth. We're giving people the opportunity to become certified, so you can use that certification to go into schools, human services organizations, places of employment, group sessions, and when people have group therapy sessions and so forth, cultural organizations. People pay $100, $200, $300 for somebody to come out and do a half an hour session with their students to help them focus, to enhance learning outcomes, to go to a women's shelter to assist the women if they're overcoming depression and anxiety so they can get on track to get their lives back in order and so forth. Group therapy sessions for people who were addicted to drugs or they were homeless and they're getting themselves back on track. They bring people out to conduct the meditation session at the beginning or at the end of a session and so forth. Independent schools, charter schools, conventional schools, cultural organizations, they may have say if they had a Juneteenth event or a seminar or a lecture or a Kwanzaa event or some summer solstice event, different kinds of events. And they say, we want to do a meditation session first, or somebody in between and so forth, and they'll pay you a couple of $100 to conduct that session. And people set up these sessions, maybe a school on Monday, a shelter on Tuesday, another school on Wednesday, and a cultural organization on Thursday. You make a couple of $100 per day, and some people do it for side, income, and some people do it as a, full-time income. So we wanted to give people the opportunity to be certified. Some people were going to, other organizations to get these certifications, typically through some kind of Hindu or European certification course. And of course, they're just teaching a mixture of misinformation and a little bit of accurate information. And you're paying these people to teach something that's not fully accurate, but we have the capacity to, assist our people in that process. So this is what the certification course is about. And you're just teaching people basic introductory forms of meditation for those tangible benefits of, enhanced learning outcomes or productivity for people in work environments. They'll have somebody come out at an employee seminar to show how meditation a few minutes a day can enhance productivity at work. It can also lower anxiety and stress, and it just overall is beneficial for the organization. So they'll pay people, sometimes with corporations, they may pay you more, $500 or $1,000 to come out because they have the budget for that. But we talk about all these things, give the cosmology, the true history, and so forth, the spirituality of it, but also how to conduct these sessions in these kinds of, scenarios, in these kinds of, organizations and so forth, and how to utilize that credential to get these kinds of, contracts. So sometimes they're done by word of mouth. Somebody knows you have that certification. They say, hey, I have a group of youth who we teach finance, or we teach martial arts to, or we teach chess, or we have them do certain things in after school programs, but we want you to come once a week on a Tuesday and do meditation with them. Or we have somebody, we have a cultural organization. They have lectures once every other week and so forth. We want to start off with meditation. We want you to come out and conduct that. So this is what we have. So we have the option. You can do a split payment option. You can put the down payment up front to preserve your space. And then next week or the week after, you can make the balance. And we also have this option we also created, sharing just with those people on our subscriber list and Patreon group and so forth. Let me pull this up. And we did a video about this, so you will see the video on our page when you check it out. We have a referral fee option for you, so an offer for you. So if, for example, you refer the meditation course to someone and they, refer someone, or no, if you refer it, let them know about it, and they say, hey, that's something I'm interested in. I always want to learn how to not only to practice meditation, but also to teach it on a fundamental, introductory level to youth as well as adults. Once they register for the course, then we will send you the referral fee of $100. The course is $399. It's a 4-week course. It's basically $99 per week. And once you complete the course and receive your certification, you can utilize that, of course, to begin to generate income for yourself. So even the first couple of, events that you schedule, have a couple of events where you go and teach, you make a couple $100, within a week or two, you will have paid for your $400 class, within the first couple of contracts that you put forward. But if you refer someone and they register for the course and they pay the $399, then once they pay the $399, they will send you $100 as a referral fee. We'll PayPal you or Cash App you or Zelle you or whatever. And we're doing that because, if you hadn't referred the person, then we wouldn't have known they existed and we wouldn't have been able to connect with them and get them on the path to certification. So that's an offer for those who follow the work we're doing, subscribe to us, and so forth. That's not a thing that we put out for everybody. It's for the people on our list, whether it's subscriber list, Patreon, on our email list, or following us on Instagram and so forth. That's what it's for. So if you refer one person, you get a $100 referral fee. If you referred 4 people or 5 people and they all registered, then you'll receive $400 or $500 of referral fee and so forth, just for finding the person. So, but the course begins next Wednesday. So if you'd like to reserve your space, we do have some spots available. You can reserve your space for $199, 50% deposit. You'll see that on our SUSUW page, and I'll put that link in the chat. Well, the link is in the chat room. I'll show you the page right now. So you can make the deposit, reserve your spot, and then you can, of course, pay the balance either next week or the following week. But this is the SUSUW page on the website. You'll see the trailer. And when you refer people, just send them to the page, and they'll see the trailer. Talks about the course and so forth. You'll see the flyer. And then you'll also see that a number of the broadcasts that we did live on YouTube about different aspects of meditation, for example, Merit, the female divinity of meditation and silence, who governs the epiglottis in the body and so forth. We go into detail about her cosmology. We talk about the balance, complementary balance of male and female. We talk about the female divinity Bast and the pericardium, that the sac that surrounds the heart, and how she governs that shrine in the body, and how it's associated with SUSUW meditation, a number of different things that we talk about. So you can check out some of those videos to get some more insight, but you can send people to the page when they see the page and see the trailer and see the, all of the information, as well as the Nkwamua Whole Life Journal, which is the book that we utilize, as well as some of the other books within the course. And it's kind of like a blueprint to assist you in implementing these meditation sessions, these SUSUW sessions, when you go out into the marketplace to conduct these sessions. You have a blueprint with good information to assist in that process. So you can download that book for free on that page and look through it. It's a basic, journal with good information. And we show how to utilize these, the information in that book in these various sessions. So, all right. Okay, so I think that's all we needed to cover. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, Medase, we appreciate that. Appreciate your support of the work. So, okay, so once again, Yerase, we thank everybody for joining us. And Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. Heads up.